Good evening. Thank you for listening to our broadcast. This is Steve Sumner with Blocker Radio, Blocker Canada, USA, in conjunction with Beating the Drums of Justice. Blocker Radio, we fight evil. I'm got a great guest tonight. Of course, as always, wanted to say thank you to our founder, CEO, and host, John Anderson, as well as Becky Kemble, without whom none of this would be possible. But for this evening's guest, we do have Mr. Charles Stecker. Mr. Stecker is looking for answers. This is almost 40-something years after he witnessed his brother's death in foster care. So he's looking for answers. And the fascinating story here. Hi there, Charles. Are you there? Hi, Charles.
Hello, how are you, Steve?
Hey, great. Yeah, as I was saying in the introduction, you are looking for answers. This is more than 44 years after witnessing your brother's death in foster care. You were only 4 years old at the time, is that correct?
Yes, I was 4 years old, and actually this Saturday, February 28th, will actually mark the 48th anniversary of my brother's murder.
48 years. Wow. Okay. And I'm not sure where you want to start, but it sounds like it's just such a tragic story. We'll get to the part where you're getting finally some answers. But as I understand, you were only 4 years old. Your little brother Eddie was 2, and it was the foster mother who committed this crime, correct?
Yes, it was.
Okay, and you actually saw this when you were 4?
I not only saw it, I held him as he took his last breaths.
Oh, good.
Along with living the remainder of my life, not only with that memory emblazoned in my psyche, but with a left arm that, due to her brutal beating, has been disfigured for the remainder of my life. She shattered my elbow, actually snapped it in the other direction, and it had to be rebuilt with screws and plates that to this day are still in there. And it hasn't given me full extension of my arm, but it hasn't stopped me either. I'm blessed to also be a honorably discharged veteran of the U.S. Coast Guard, so nothing holds me back.
Wow, yeah, it sounds like it. And when this happened, I'm reading an article which describes kind of what happened there. Your foster mother put your little Eddie to bed, and he was crying profusely. You say he was probably beaten up?
We arrived in that home on February 15th of 1967. And obviously I told you February 28th, this Saturday, is I call it his angelversary.
Wow.
An angelversary to me is a day that a child gained their angel wings by losing their life here on earth due to a child abuser. But yeah, we had been there only 13 days, and I can recall vividly the torture that we went through, the beatings, the threats, the Jekyll and Hyde this woman was, from who she was when her husband was around to who she was when he wasn't. Learning who the boogeyman was and how all these evil things were going to happen to us. And yeah, it was quite a harrowing experience for a 4-year-old to have to deal with.
Good Lord, yeah, incredible. And so basically, what happened, from what I'm reading in the story, is she came in because Eddie was crying. Would you describe the events? What happened after that she came into the room?
I certainly will, and I want to preface my description where people might say, well, this is 48 years ago, or might think, how can someone possibly remember 48 years ago? And I would support that thought process with this caveat. As we'll find out as our show goes along here, something happened in 2011 that we will get to, we will come to, that solidified and affirmed my memory of what happened. And when we get to that, I'll expound more on what I mean by that. But yeah, I can tell you exactly what happened. I can remember it as if it's just happening right now. Eddie and I had been placed in our room for bed for the night. I had a little single bed across from his crib. He was once again crying because of the beatings and the threats and things that had been done to us. I was trying to get him to, hush because I was afraid she would come in and, put more fear into us. She had left the corner, the one side of his crib wasn't completely up the yard. It was actually about 3/4 of the way up. And he was crying. She came into the room in a very agitated state. Went and he had a set of, we had this kid's bowling pin game, and she went in the crib. She went, I guess, to grab one of the bowling pins out, or the bowling pins out, and put them on and throw them on the floor. And when she did, she went to swat at him to get him to silence him, to get him to stop crying. Little did she know that hit that she went to silence him would actually permanently silence him, because when she swung at him, her arm and the corner of the little toy bowling pin caught him on the neck and back of the head, and he came out over the top of the rail and landed on the floor head first and crumpled into a silence. And I remember I jumped out of bed and I ran over and I grabbed him and I was holding him, and this information has been verified. This isn't just a 48-year later memory that I haven't been able to verify. I proceeded to observe blood coming from his eyes and his ears, and she started to beat on me to get me off of him. And apparently I had him so tightly, as tightly as a 4-year-old could. I mean, but that she actually she's claimed in her statements that my grip on my brother and refusal to let him go is what caused my arm to shatter. And that's what finally got her to release him. And then she took him into the bathtub, which I remember going in there and seeing her holding him under the water, trying to wash the blood off him as he was actively dying.
Good Lord. Wow. Talk about trauma. That's incredible. And this is back in 1967. I'm wondering what there's part of the article too. You seem to have gone past your anger, your rage with this, and there is something here about the Philadelphia Police Commissioner back in 1967, Frank Rizzo, and what happened with that? I mean, you ended up being friends with the police commissioner there, with Frank.
Well, yes, at the time of my brother's murder, Frank Rizzo was the police commissioner of Philadelphia. Subsequent to that, anyone who knows Philadelphia politics knows a few years later he went on to become mayor of Philadelphia.
Oh.
And him and I actually, what's that?
No, that's okay. I didn't know that part. Okay.
Yeah, he went on to become mayor, one of the more well-known mayors in the country for his hard-lined approach to crime on the streets. But Frank had 2 terms. Him and I, he stayed in close contact with me throughout his life. He did pass away a few years ago. He was integral in helping me gain an appointment to Annapolis Naval Academy, which I had been given with the help of my step grandpa and Frank Rizzo's recommendation and several other people. But unfortunately, that never came to fruition either. But yeah, Frank Rizzo, God bless his soul. He's passed on now. But yeah, him and I had stayed close. Okay.
And the strange thing is, I guess here was that what happened when after the rescue people got there, the ambulance, was the stepmother arrested at that point?
The foster mother the next evening on March 1st was arrested and charged with involuntary manslaughter, child endangerment, and I forget the other charge. She had 3 charges placed against her on March 1st. Probably that next morning. I don't have the times in my hands because unfortunately I have yet to have the records.
Yeah, this is what I'm looking at. You were looking, you couldn't find no court record or arrest record or no record of it even happening. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's part of what I was alluding to earlier. Just to kind of give you a step back, a scenario a little bit. After my brother's murder, I stayed in the child welfare system for another 8 years, and those actually were a good 8 years. And I want to say that very clearly, that while this one foster home was not a good place, we were only there 13 days. Me, my brother, and sister had already been in foster care for a year prior to that, and my sister and I stayed in the system for another 8 years. My sister, I believe it was 9 years after that. My sister wasn't with my brother or I in the home where he was murdered. She was at another foster home. Thank God she didn't have to experience that or possibly be hurt herself. She's younger. She was only like a year old at that time. But so I say that because it will help put more of a understanding on the timeline of the story. So after I got out of foster care, I was returned to my birth mother, who was my original abuser, was the reason, part and parcel to why we were in foster care in the first place. And upon my being returned to my birth mother, I was sent home to her with a full scholarship. I was sent to her between 8th and 9th grade, so I was going to her entering into high school. And I had a full scholarship awarded to me because of my academic abilities in 1st to 8th grade to a very prestigious college prep school on the high school level. I had also, because of those academic excellences, as they called them back then, I was able to ascertain a pre-appointment to the Annapolis Naval Academy, where that's where Frank Rizzo and several other dignitaries at the time, along with my former, my step-grandpa, Harry Forrest, were able to get me an appointment there based upon my completion of this academic high school. Well, upon going home to Mom, I wasn't allowed to go to that school. And matter of fact, I wasn't allowed to go to any school. Many other things happened at home that I'm not going to go into today on this show. That's a topic for a different day. But needless to say, I didn't get to go to that high school. I lost my appointment to Annapolis. Matter of fact, I ended up failing 9th grade and having to repeat 9th grade, which leads me to answer the question we started off. Why kind of went off onto that tangent. In 1981, I finally got away from my birth mother. I finally got away from my final abuser. And that's when I started to research my brother's death. I wanted to know. People would ask me, when I would find out I had a brother who was murdered, most of the time I didn't want to talk about it because I really didn't know anything. I mean, I knew he died. I knew he was murdered. I knew I was with him. But I don't know anything else. I didn't know. They'd ask me questions like, well, what happened to the foster mother? Typical questions.
Yeah.
How did it happen? What went on? And I'm going, I don't know. So I wanted to know. In 1981, I embarked on that journey to know. Little did I know that journey that started in November of 1981 would take me till this very day in 2015 to continue to be on the quest to solve. And here's what I know so far. I found out in 1981 that not only did that foster mother murder my brother, but 10 months before, in April of 1966, another child had died in her care already.
Wow.
And she hadn't been held accountable for that boy's death either. And for reasons that I've yet to find out, she was given myself and my brother. Obviously, like I said, that little boy lived with her for 4 months. He was 3 years old at his death. My brother and I lived there 13 days. So I found that out. I also found out that was as much as I was going to find out at that point. That, I spent day upon day sitting at the the main branch of the Philadelphia Free Library, researching microfiche, and some of the young folks might not know what that is. And microfiche is what we had before a Google search. We had to go look at films, and we actually had to look at by hand, and you couldn't just type in something and it came up. And I was able to locate articles from around the country. My story made the AT back then because of the tragedy of it, because of not only was it a child murdered, not only was it a child murdered under a child welfare system, but it was a child murdered where another child had previously died. But like most stories, it begins and ends as fast as it began in the newspaper and the media. I was able to find stories for about a week after, and then it died, but there was nothing in them that gave me any conclusive evidence on what happened. But armed with those articles, which I have original copies. I was able to get some original copies from my birth father where I located him with a death certificate that my birth father had. The city of Philadelphia would not, they said they didn't have any, the city of Philadelphia denied any records of my brother's death at all. And I found that absolutely preposterous. How could that possibly be? That you have no records of a murder of a child, of a murder in the first place, and a child on top of that. Records in the city of Philadelphia are to be kept on murders are kept for 100 years. And they do that so that way if there's anybody that can have any level of responsibility after 100 years, unless they did it when they were infant at birth, they're going to be gone. So there's nobody can be held accountable. So I knew there had to be records. That led me on what became a 30-year journey. It took me from 1981 with just armed with the things I told you: newspaper articles, a death certificate that said beaten and homicide, and a memory of my brother's death.
Wow.
It took me the next 30 years to locate records that I found out in 2011 existed all along. That I found out, for whatever reasons, the city of Philadelphia never wanted to come out from the deep hidden archives that they were in. And in 1981, which would have been the 44th anniversary of my brother's murder, I was able to find that not only were there records, there were detailed records. There was a death certificate, even though I already had the one my dad had. There was a medical examiner's report. There was a full investigation done by the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office. There was police reports and arrest records, and all these things I told didn't exist, which common sense tells you they must have. And I was excited. I'm like, finally, my quest to get my records is going to end. A 30-year quest is finally coming to fruition, and I was excited. Now I don't want to go on too much in case you have some questions, but I want to expound on what's happened, after the location of those records, and share some of what I found out during the process of getting those records. But in the meantime, I don't want to take you away from some questions you may have.
Well, no, our research indicates, February 15th of 1967, that you were placed in. Initially, you were with a sister as well, Dawn, I believe. You were first in foster care, but this family, for some reason, and if it's okay, I mean, it's public record. I can say the name of the foster parents that we're talking about, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Lillian and Donald Bedford.
Okay, yes. Donald and Lillian Bedford, absolutely. And for whatever reason, it appears this family, the Bedfords, they only wanted the boys. So your sister was separated. Dawn had stayed behind. And obviously, I mean, just a little kid. To you at 4 years old, you couldn't have had much experience with what was good or bad. But what I'm looking at after the fact, and I'm trying to get to see what happened with Lillian Bedford, but she apparently confessed. Is that right? Did she make a full confession down the road?
Well, here's the direct answer to your question is I do not know.
Okay.
And the reason I don't know is those records, as I said, that were located, the investigation report by the DA's office, the arrest records from the Philadelphia Police Department, the reports on the previous child's death that had been reopened, the medical examiner's reports on both children's deaths. The little boy in 1966, his name was Brent Garcia, and then my brother's death. Those records, all those records, which I told didn't exist, I was able to locate in 2011. And so then people say, wow, good, you located the records so you can answer our questions. Well, sadly, no, I cannot, because while I located the records with the help of former District Attorney Lynn Abraham, after 30 years of leveraging her for her assistance, the day I located I didn't locate the records, the day the detective from the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office Homicide Division located my records, and him and I went over them on the phone, and that's what I alluded to earlier about it was confirmed my memory of things were as what I told you was exactly what happened, because on that day in 2011, when that detective called me and says, Charles, I was able to locate all of your records, and he told me I have the police report, I have the DA's report, I have the medical examiner's reports, I have the site profile, I have everything. He said, before I talk to you about any of this, share with me what you remember. And I shared with him what I remembered. And he said to me, if I didn't know better, his words, if I didn't know better, Charles, I would think you were looking over my shoulder.
Wow.
He asked me to describe what the house looked like, what the room looked like, what the beds looked like. He said, obviously, the pictures, because they were from back then, they were black and white, they weren't color. But he said, he says, and tell me what you recall about what happened. And I told him, he says, Charles, again, he said, reading your statements, he said, we have 4 statements from you. He said, this case was investigated pretty heavily. He said, and he said, we have 4 statements from you over a year period of time that you were questioned the day of your brother's murder. You were questioned from several other times, and each time your statement stayed consistent. And he said, and the irony is, I'm talking to you on the phone right now. You're not in front of me. You haven't seen these. I know you haven't, because I had to blow the dust off of them when I found them. And you're reading to me like you're reading over my shoulder. So that's how I can tell you that what I remember is exactly what happened, because it's been verified via telephone. So I'm excited at this point. And, people are like, well, what's your purpose for getting your records? Well, besides some level of closure, the real purpose for getting my records for me is to find what the systemic problem that happened in 1967, that in 2011, and unfortunately still now in 2015, still goes on with children in a child welfare system that isn't really protecting the children, isn't really saving their lives. Yes, there's quite a few there are, but then you have as I've become to call them, the collateral damage ones, the lives that are lost because of a system that's not doing what it's supposed to do, it's not checking itself, and that's the reason I want my records. It's no other purpose. It can't bring my brother back. I'm not looking to sue anybody and get rich and make money off of my brother's death. It's to find the systemic problem that went on then that's still going on, and I've sat on death boards and everything else, as you'll find out in my adult life, the things I've done, and they say, oh, we've made major changes. Philadelphia, when they put me several years before that, or actually several years after that, they had another death in Philadelphia, and I made the news, and a little girl named Danielle Kelly had been murdered in the child welfare system, and they were indicative of the fact that we've made major changes in the child welfare system since your brother's death, Charles. And I said, okay, I'll give you that. You've made major changes, but let me sum it up real easy for you and real simplistic that even a kindergartner will understand. Have your changes created a different outcome? Are children still dying under the care of a system that's supposed to be protecting them, especially children who were abused and neglected already, being brought into a system where they should never have to worry about that again? And not only are they getting abused and neglected, but they're getting murdered, and they're getting murdered in rates that are growing. And yet you say you've changed. Well, good. If you've changed and you're not doing the right changes, let's make changes that really have a positive impact so that we don't lose another child, so that another family doesn't have to mourn, another sibling doesn't have to be separated for the rest of their life. But let's do that, and that's my motivation. It's not going to bring my brother back, but if we can change this pariah that's happening for families, if we can proactively stop this process before it even begins, that's what I want to do.
That's exactly what we're trying to do as well. The reason for the show is exactly that. And we're seeing this happening all the time. The Miami Herald down here did an article, a series actually, 7 articles, that showed how so many kids have died. We're talking about over 400 kids, something like 477 kids that died after going through the hands of DCF, which is the agency here, is the DCF. And it's still happening right now. It is unbelievable, the amount of carelessness that's going on. And so this is something that's a laudable cause. I mean, fantastic that you're doing this. And I'm curious to find out because somewhere in here also there was the famous author Joe McGinnis, who was then a columnist, I believe, for the Inquirer. He did he ever do like any type of interview with you, or was that like a peripheral type of thing?
Joe McGinnis in 1967 was a fairly young new news reporter with the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Mm-hmm.
Folks may not realize who he is, and I'll give you anybody who's familiar with Sarah Palin. If you remember the story about the author that moved in near her house in Alaska to gain more information to write a book about her, well, that's the same guy. That's Mr. Joe McGinnis. So back in 1967, at the time of my brother's death, he had done a feature article where he interviewed my foster father only hours after my foster mother was arrested. And that article is actually one of the only things that's still alive, in the newspaper archives, where I can actually put my hand on the newspaper itself. Temple University's archives actually have a copy of the original article. It's almost a full newspaper page long. Now, when I say newspaper, I'm not talking tabloid style. I'm talking it's probably the length of a full tabloid paper, though, but it's a rather long, lengthy article, and goes into details of giving the aspect of the story from the foster father's viewpoint in a moment where his wife just murdered a child, or just had a child. They don't call it murder. They call it had a child die in her care. Yeah. And apparently he had already been arrested and was in jail while this interview took place. And apparently the foster father had started to drink a few alcoholic beverages in the process of this interview, and was getting from his viewpoint. And he talks in the article in reference to not only my brother, but the little boy that just before my brother's, 10 months before my brother, that is made mention to. So yeah, Mr. McGinnis did do that in-person interview from a foster father's perspective. My foster father, I will say this, was not there at the time of my brother's murder. He was a hardworking painter. That's what he did for a living. My foster mother, while like I said, only there 13 days, she was a Sunday school teacher. So from outside, everything looked like it should be a perfect place to be. But so that's how Joe McGinnis ties into this story. Okay,
and he's also the popular writer who did the McDonald case, which was Fatal Vision. They made the movie out of it, and that became a very popular book and very popular movie, and the catalyst for a lot of people realizing what Jeffrey McDonald had done. We're almost at that time to take a quick break. We have a couple of minutes, but we do. I'm seeing here too. You do have some really pretty bad recollections from what I'm seeing here about living with the Bedfords, huh?
Well, I don't recall too much good. I know that there was the only good time was when Mr. Bedford would come home, when Donald would come home. Uh-huh. That's when it was good times. But most of the time he worked late, and like I said, we weren't there very long. I mean, we were there. Really, when you think of it, it's really 12 days, because on the 13th day my brother was dead, and I was in the hospital clinging to life.
Wow. But they do kind of bad things, like she would hold your heads under the faucets and beat you, and I mean it sounds like a lot.
She would threaten us with. I mean, she had. Matter of fact, it took me into. I was in the U.S. Coast Guard when I finally overcame this fear. They had basement steps where they had no back on the steps, and she used to send us down into the dark basement, but she would go down ahead of us and call us down there, and then grab our legs as we were going down the steps and tell us, "Boogeyman," and grab us and scare us. And it took me until I was in my early adulthood to get past that fear. If I would go down steps that didn't have a back, I would literally jump 3 and 4 and 5 steps at a time to get so that nothing could grab me. I mean, it was, and I still have at 52 years old, I still have a fear of dark, confined spaces. I still get a little leery, and I tend to shy away from them.
Wow. And this is something, as you pointed out correctly, there's something that's still going on now. Okay, and we're coming up on the half-hour break. Just hold your thoughts, and we got to take a real quick pause for the cause. We'll be right back with Mr. Charles Stecker. This is Steve Sumner for Blocker Radio. We fight evil. We will be right back. Thanks.
Silverman Slims, your #1 review dealer. We offer Google reviews, Yelp reviews, Facebook review, website reviews, and more. And for a price that no one can beat. Want to make your business grow? Want to gain better SEO business profile? This is the right place to go. With top-notch service, they get the job done. Real reviews written by real people. That's Silverman Slim, the best and only place to go for the best price in review sales. Making businesses grow is our business. www.silvermanslim.com.
And we're back. This is Steve Sumner for Blocker Radio. We fight evil. Our guest tonight, Charles Stecker. If you've heard the first half hour, he's got an amazing story. Charles was only 4 years old when he saw his foster mother kill his little brother at 2 years old. It was a really horrible situation he was in the Bedford's home. This is the foster family where they were placed. In the two boys, the sister Donna got separated. And Charles, where do we leave off in the last half hour? Where do you want to pick up from?
Well, we were talking about. I'll just pick up because I don't know where we left off. We're talk about these records and the 30-year odyssey of locating them, and what I thought in 2011 was going to be what's the word I'm looking for here? Reaching the pinnacle
Okay.
of the mountain. I've got them. All these years, finally, proof that yes, my brother did exist. Yes, my sanity doesn't have to be questioned anymore. I mean, my sanity was questioned. My memory was questioned. Even the concept of my brother it ever happening was questioned by the city of Philadelphia authorities. And finally, I'm like, I have to prove I'm not crazy,
Yeah.
And I was so excited. And, like I said, the reporter the detective from the Philadelphia, District Attorney's Office Homicide Division who located the records went over them with me on the phone. Now, before I tell you the outcome of what happened with that, I'll tell you what happened on that phone call. Him and I went over the records. As I alluded to earlier, he asked me to tell him what I recalled, and I did. And he said, wow, it's like you're looking over my shoulder. And then he went a little further into the records, and he shared with me some things that none of it I had any idea of except my memories, but he shared with me some interesting things that to this day intrigue me, and to this day make me wonder why where the records are now, why they're there. And I'm just being a little evasive on telling folks why that is because I want to hold that off for a moment to really bring that out. But he started sharing with me the fact of why there was no court records on my brother's death because the woman never went to court. She was arrested and arraigned and charged, but then her attorney was able to took down her husband had hired an attorney who at the time in Philadelphia was a very powerful attorney. He would probably, if you had to fast forward many years later, he would probably be like the Johnny Cochran in the O.J. Simpson trial. It's a really power hitter attorney that your average person just doesn't go hire. Okay, but the attorney he hired was a gentleman who just recently passed away, A. Charles Stecker Sr., and Mr. Stecker was known for taking these cases, these tight cases, high-profile cases, throughout his entire career as a defense attorney. And I hold no animosity to Mr. Stecker because he was only doing the job that he was trained to do, defend people who, in my opinion, don't deserve any defense. But that's their job as defense attorneys, and I don't know how they live with themselves at times, but that's their deal. But so he was able to get her what he did, and I found out this became his MO or modus operandi or way he handled things. Cases like this, he had her remanded. He had her bailed from jail. She was bailed on $1,000. Now $1,000 doesn't sound like a lot of money, but in 1967, you look back at inflation, $1,000 now would be a lot more money.
Right.
But that being said, her husband bailed her out on the $1,000 bail, and then immediately had her attorney had her sign herself in to a state hospital for a mental health evaluation. Setting up a defense if it were to get to court, and I say if it were because, as I already said, it never even got to court, setting up a defense that was going to be based off of an insanity plea or a temporary insanity plea. But unfortunately, it never even got into court. She went to the state hospital. The state hospital records are indicative, according to what the detective shared with me, and this is information, again, I'm going off of a verbal speaking over the phone. I have yet to see the records in person, but a verbal record of the records read to me was that the doctors found her mentally unfit and questionable as to whether she would be able to go through a trial.
Wow.
So, and within her statements, there were other questions that came to light that weren't further investigated upon because of what was deemed as her inability to possibly be able to stand trial for a mental health reason. Now, I want to put a few names out here, a few situations out here to folks that should grab your attention. One, there's a case, a well-known case from Philadelphia that a lot of people know, a lot of people don't, but there's a case called the Unknown Child. It's from 1957 in Philadelphia. It's the case of, it's America's Unknown Child. His case has been studied around the world. To this day, he has yet to be identified. His body was located in 1957, 10 years before my brother's murder, not too far from where this foster mother lived. In South Key section of Philadelphia, she lived in the Germantown section. And that case has gone, to this day, unsolved. He is still gone unidentified. He is known, like I said, as America's Unknown Child. And there was some things in the questioning of her that may have alluded that she may have had something or been involved or knew something about that case, because there was some things put in there where she had, under questioning, under psych profile, indicated that there may have been other children previously to my brother and the other little boy. But nothing was ever further investigated on that, and it was let fall by the wayside. In addition, the little boy who died before my brother, Brink, as I said his name was earlier, I was never able to locate anything on him. I mean, nothing, except in the newspaper. I couldn't even find articles from 1966 when he died. It never made the papers. It was just like it never happened. The only way his name comes up is in the articles written about me and my brother in 1967 when my brother was murdered. And so the detective looks to that. He sees that for whatever reason, the city of Philadelphia in 1966 allowed this foster family, the Bedfords,
right, to
bury that little boy under a den barrier, like this he was theirs.
Wow.
Which makes no sense, even if the detective says that doesn't make any sense to me. That doesn't seem right. But that's what happened. So, you know, it just got pushed away, shoved under the carpet, like it never happened. And I'm gonna put the name. There's a name that most everyone. Again, I say most everyone. I realize that we're dealing with an audience that's much younger, possibly, but there's a name. There's a certain political figure who just died recently, who was a key player in my brother's case. He is the man that could have and should have not only prosecuted this woman for my brother's death, but prosecuted her for the death before my brother, which would have possibly kept my brother alive,
right,
and or investigated her in the death of the boy in the box from 1957. That's the actual name. They call him the boy in the box. If you Google search it, it's been nationally and internationally investigated, still actively going today. But he didn't do anything with it. Matter of fact, he at the time, and I'm gonna reveal his name momentarily. At the time of my brother's death, this man was the district attorney of Philadelphia. That's how I know he was in position to have this case tried and at least come before a court, at least come before a jury of peers to make a decision. It never even went any further. She was put in a state hospital. It was deemed she was mentally unfit to stand trial. The district attorney at the time in Philadelphia said to her attorney, "Okay, well, we're not going to waste tax." Basically, I don't know the words verbatim. I wasn't there, but basically, you can surmise we don't want to waste taxpayer dollars on a case where the city's not going to win anyway. So she's at the state hospital. Okay, let's let it go. Well, they forgot a few things. One, she was at the state hospital on her own signing in. So guess what? Right after the case was done getting investigated, she was released from the state hospital and never held accountable for what happened. Now, ultimately, I believe when she passed away, she needs the ultimate accountability, and hopefully she's done what she was supposed to make peace with that, her maker, if she chose to. But that's between her and him, not me.
Now, just to make sure we got it straight, you're talking about in your brother's case, right? Because when it comes to Brent Garcia, the child who was 2 years old, who was living with the Bedfords, and they didn't prove the murder there. So apparently, I mean, that just kind of went by the wayside. What I'm looking at here, too, our research indicated there were press reports that little Brent Garcia had a severe bruise on his scalp, but they were unable to determine, it looks like, the cause of death, how he died. They said he accidentally fell off a rocking horse. But still, we're talking about April of 1966, just a few months prior to you, being put in the same situation. You would think they would have a little more common sense.
You would hope so, anyway, right? But you're right over all that. It's phenomenal. And I've been waiting to reveal the name of this person, the DA, who, in my eyes, in my opinion, bears the blood of these children's lives on his hands. He has since passed away. He has moved on to whatever pastures he's in, greener or not. But that district attorney at the time was someone who many years later, I'm gonna do a little. I'm gonna have a little fun with this, I guess. If you can have fun with it a little. I'm gonna throw a little quiz out here. Do you remember the Warren Commission?
Oh yeah, of course, sure.
Okay. Do you remember one of the lead people on the Warren Commission in the single bullet theory on John F. Kennedy's assassination? What his name might have been? One of the lead politicians.
Didn't Arlen Specter come up with the bullet theory? But I know John Ford, the president, was there. Earl Warren, but I don't recall offhand everyone. You're gonna have to refresh my memory on that.
Well, you did well. You did very, very well. You hit it dead on. What was the first name you said?
I think it was Arlen Specter, right?
Oh, so now here's if you ever get on, you want to be a millionaire, and you get asked a question. In 1967, who was the district attorney of Philadelphia? Your answer would be?
No kidding. Was it Arlen Specter?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Wow.
Yes, Arlen Specter, he was the district attorney of Philadelphia who could have made sure that this never happened again. And could have possibly, I don't know definitively that this lady was connected with the Boy in the Box case from 10 years prior, but in 1957, she would have been 33, because in 1967, when she murdered my brother, she was 43.
Right.
The house wasn't that far. The little boy, when you see the remake of The Boy in the Box, this boy's story's been all over. Matter of fact, one of the artists recreations from skulls to recreate what a person looked like. The original artist who started that was his first case, was the boy in the box case. He had to recreate what this boy looked like. And this little boy, when you see his recreations, looks like he could have been my brother and a relative of my brother. I mean, they sent the MO what this family was looking for in children. Now, what Brent Garcia looks like, I have no idea. But apparently it's in these records. And so, yeah, Arlen Specter was the district attorney of Philadelphia in 1967 at the time of my brother's murder. Arlen Specter single-handedly made sure, with the assistance of the defense attorney that her husband hired, that nothing ever was done with it. So,
wow.
Let's fast. Yeah, isn't that some incredible stuff?
Yeah.
Let's fast forward to 2011, and my phone call with this detective. After we go over these, I knew he was searching for them. There had been some lead given to me that I gave to him, and he was able to locate some things and get these records. I'm excited. We're going over on the phone with him. He's just, we're talking. He's asking me to describe the room and what the crib looked like and what I recall about this and that, and I'm just like excited because I'm like, finally, I'm gonna get these things. Now, I lived a 20-minute drive from the district attorney's office at that time. I had moved back to Philadelphia. It was 30 minutes, almost to the minute, from the moment I hung up with him that I arrived in the district attorney's office to get my records. Because when I hung up with him, I said, I'd like a copy of those records. And what he said to me, Charles, I'd be more than happy to make you a copy of them. He said, my concern is he said, while they're black and white pictures and there's a lot of information in here, my concern is you getting them by yourself without anyone being with you and you seeing these and the effect it may have on you, psychologically. And I said, no, listen, you don't understand. There's nothing that's going to affect me that already hasn't. Having those records in my hand will be a lifelong quest that I can move on with the next level of what I want to do, which was to go through them and find the systemic error or errors that occurred that were still occurring in a system that's failing children. And so I got there, and he comes down. I remember looking. I have no idea what the guy looks like. I've only ever talked to him on the phone at that point, probably about a half a dozen times. Because each step of the way, when he located the arrest records, he called me and let me know, hey, I got the arrest records. I'm still looking for court records. I'm still looking for investigation records. I'm still waiting on the medical examiner's reports. Blah 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 blah. So each time something came up, he'd call me and we'd talk, and I get more excited. And I'm like, oh, thank you so much. And he says, no, this is an amazing quest for me. I never would have thought when I got into doing this that I'd be doing something like at this level. And I said, thank you. So I arrived, and I don't know what the guy looks like, but out of the elevator comes a gentleman, and I must have stood out to him pretty significantly. He walks over, he says, Charles, how are you? And I shook his hand, and I said, how you doing, detective? And he says, I said, well, we're going to go up to your office, and I'm ready. He says, well, there's a situation, Charles. He says, unfortunately, after we got off the phone, and my superior asked me what was going on, I let them know. I was told that that you have a copy of the records, and that I'm not allowed to release any of it to you. And I said, but that doesn't make sense. It's my story. It's my brother. I'm in it. I mean, I can prove. Look at my arm. Here's my arm. I said, here's the articles I told you about. Here's the testing. I mean, I had all my information with me. I had my brother's baby book with me. I'm like, here's everything to prove him. Here's my identification. I mean, what more do you need? He said, Charlie, I'm sorry. I was told I cannot give you any of them. He said, I don't know what you can do to get them, but I can't do it. He says, and I apologize. He said, I feel so bad. He said, I know it was a few months he had researched to locate all this stuff. And I was there so disheartened. And I was like, this is unbelievable. Well, just a few weeks prior to that, a Philadelphia newspaper reporter had decided to go ahead and do a story on me. And the story was supposed to be on my service to Philadelphia as a committee person, as a head of town watch from a neighborhood, as a member of several civic associations, and as an advocate fighting for children in the city of Philadelphia. While I was attending a meeting with the Internal Affairs Department, the police department, working hand in hand with the city, with the community on openness of records and transparency on what they were doing. So she was going to interview me based off of that. She knew nothing about my background and story until I shared it with her. When I shared it with her, it went from talking about what that meeting was about to that went away to talking about my story and what it was and what happened. And she even went, along with the newspaper's publisher, and used their press credentials to get these records in an attempt to have these records released. And they were told, and it's quoted in the newspaper article that was released in May of 2011, my brother's story became front-page news in Philadelphia, in the Philadelphia Weekly newspaper. We were the cover story and the main story in that paper that week. It took 6 pages of the newspaper to write out the watered-down version of the story that she put together. But in that story, the district attorney spokesperson, the current district attorney spokesperson, her last name is Jameson, says, and I quote, "Neither Charles nor anyone will ever be able to get these records." And that was unbelievable. Now, today's district attorney in Philadelphia, you would think he'd be a champion for children, because our current Philadelphia district attorney is a former foster child who was adopted, who ended up getting into a good home and being raised in a good place. So you would think he would be champion to try and help. But we know that, unfortunately in the political world, him releasing whatever's in these records or allowing them to come out would probably hinder his ability to move any further along politically at that point anyway, especially now when we look with the connection with Arlen Specter. So, current DA in Philadelphia is Seth Williams. But, I walked out of there with no records, with a 30-year quest where I thought was going to end into a dead end, into a black hole of abyss, going, man, what do I do? But you know what? I have a strong faith in God, and while I believe that each one of us has a right to believe in whatever we want to, mine is in God, and I said, you're going to show me a way to get those records. And I'm happy to report, while I don't have the records in my hand yet, I have upcoming, it's just based upon me making the phone call to set up the final exact day and date that we're going to meet. I have an upcoming meeting, actually a sit-down one-on-one dinner paid for by the person that I'm meeting with. And that person I'm meeting with is someone that was not only the former district attorney of Philadelphia, not only a former mayor of Philadelphia, but went on to become the governor of Pennsylvania. And his name is Ed Rendell.
Okay.
As soon as I have the opportunity to sit down and call set up the meeting with his office, I have a paid meal ticket to have a one-on-one sit-down dinner or luncheon with him at a prominent place in Philadelphia. And at that meeting, he has no idea who I am. Why I'm coming. All he knows is that a paid dinner was put in to a raffle at a child abuse prevention fundraiser put on by the Child Advocacy Center, Support Center for Child Advocates in Philadelphia, and that someone won it. Well, that someone who won it was me, because I made sure I won it. I bid it until everybody was outbidded, so it was mine. Because I want that opportunity to sit with him and leverage him as a former district attorney, a former mayor, a former governor of Pennsylvania to get my records released. So that's the next step in this quest. That's where I am at. And it's just tenacity, the unwillingness to step back, the not knowing how to quit, the standing up. And I encourage anyone out there that listens to this, that if you're going through anything even remotely like this and you're being stonewalled, don't let them stonewall you. Stand up, continue to persevere, continue to press on, and know that, hope is there and answers will come. They want us to quit. They want us to be silent. They want us to shut us down. Don't let that happen.
That's right. That's right. And part of this, going back to the case is just unbelievable to me. You weren't even when you were informed about your little brother's passing away. You were at the hospital. I mean, you had broken bones. you were beaten by this woman, and that's how you actually even found out about it, huh?
Yeah, well, I didn't realize he had actually died in my arms until 2011 when the detective read through the records with me. I remember him breathing. I remember him,
Mm-hmm.
of course, I was 4 years old. How am I going to know?
No, right.
I had no idea. But, I found out later on that, it was determined that my brother had died at the home prior to even getting his DOA when he arrived at the hospital. And so, I'm sorry, I lost track there of what you had asked me.
No, that you were actually in a hospital as well. I mean, so you.
Oh yeah, yes, I was in Germantown Hospital. They had to do emergency surgery. Matter of fact, the doctor who rebuilt my arm using at that time what was technology that he had gone over to Japan and brought to the United States. Again, this information I found out through my investigations over the last 40 years. He went to Japan and learned arthroscopic surgery procedures, and I was one of the earlier recipients of an arthroscopic procedure on my left arm to rebuild it using screws, plates, cadaver bone, and arthroscopic surgery. So I have a left arm that was rebuilt, and the only visible scars I have on it are about 4 little incision marks on the outside. Now the arm doesn't extend all the way. I have about a 75% extension on it, use of it, but again, it doesn't stop me.
Yeah, it's just the whole tragedy. So I'm sorry to kind of I got you off the beaten path where you were going, but it sounds like this meeting you've got coming up might actually make some positive changes come about, huh?
Well, it's not going to have any choice because I'm going to the way you go about getting what you need to get. If you try, fighting the system from outside the system is not going to get you anywhere. It's going to get you your loud clanging gong. You're going to make noise, and they're going to go, oh, okay, and they're going to ignore you. What you have to do, and one of the pieces I didn't share, one of the pieces of the puzzle I didn't share with folks is how I was actually able to find out there was records in the first place to actually have it started to search for. And that was because what I did is I decided when my daughter was old enough and she couldn't be affected by anything I was going to do in exposing the child's welfare system's failures, I decided to move back to Philadelphia. And when I arrived back to Philadelphia, I didn't tell anyone of importance who I was or what I was doing or what my motivation was. But my reason for going back to Philadelphia after at that point I moved back in 2008, so I had already been gone for close to 30 years, was my quest was to find my records on my brother's death. And so I went back there. I quietly got involved in child welfare. I became a CASA, which is a court-appointed special advocate. I was sworn in as a CASA by the judge who was the head of family court at the time. He's now moved on to, he's waiting for an appointment to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. I just found out recently. So I got involved as a child advocate in their CASA program. And ironically, I never got a CASA case. Imagine that.
Wow.
I've learned since, CASA, while it's an independent organization, it's funded by the powers that be, by those same organizations who are supposed to be protecting children. So I don't want to, there's good out there, but in my case, my voice and voice of many people like myself who would make, and not boasting on myself, but I know I would make an awesome CASA. CASA is a court-appointed special advocate. It's people who, lay people who say, I'm going to give my time to go in and get involved in a child's life, to be their voice in court, to make sure that they're heard for not only what they want, but what's necessary for them to have a better life and not have to go through abuse anymore.
Right.
And there's wonderful people. It's a totally everybody volunteers on the work end. Of course, you have administrative level and office people to get paid, but I never got a case. And
wow.
I'm still to this day arguing as to why I didn't. And they have some ridiculous reasons as to why I didn't, and one of them being that they never got my background check clearance, which I have records of them getting. I actually have a copy of it from the FBI showing that I cleared, child abuse and background and criminal and everything else. So I said, well, here, I'll send it to you again. I have my copy that I got, and I sent it to them again, and, subsequently they never used me. But I also then got involved in the Philadelphia. I am not. I don't have a side when it comes to the political world. I'm going to leave politics out of it. Safe to say this, that I think we need a three-party system. Because how do you break a 50-50 tie? You have someone in it, a third party. But I'm not pro-Republican or anti-Democrat. I am whoever the best individual is for the job, wherever their party line falls. But that being said, we know Philadelphia is a Democratic-run city. So I went back and I got involved in a Democratic Party in Philadelphia. I got myself appointed as onto the election committee at my local polling place. Based upon getting in there and working the elections, I was able to then become an unpaid elected official. I say unpaid because I wanted to be very careful that I did not accept any money from the city of Philadelphia for what I was doing, so that way they couldn't come back and try to, when they start putting money in your hand, they want to try to throttle and control what you're saying or what you're doing. So I ended up becoming judge of elections in my area of South Philadelphia, and upon that I was also appointed Democratic committeeman for my neighborhood. Again, that was an appointed position, but it was a non-paying political position. And with those two positions, along with being hired at a very elite private members-only club in Philadelphia, where the who's who of Philadelphia and any political figure coming through Philadelphia comes to, called the Union League of Philadelphia, being hired onto their security staff as an ambassador for them, otherwise known as security officer. I was going there and rubbing elbows with people like Oliver North and Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas and First Lady Laura Bush and Senator John McCain. And I don't mean just rubbing elbows as in gradually passing by. Actually speaking with these people, actually giving them my story, asking for help, saying, is there anybody that can help me get anything? One day on my desk at the station that I was to be at that day, there was an envelope with my name on it. And when I opened that envelope, inside that envelope was a series of numbers that I later on found out was the actual arrest record for the foster mother that killed my brother.
Wow.
And I don't know who or where they came from. I just know that I found them in an envelope on my desk. I still have that piece of paper to this day. And when I took it to somebody saying, it had the foster mother's name on it, had my name on it, had dates on it, it had information that I had shared with somebody, because I had shared it with everybody. I mean, I have pictures to show. I mean, I've got the picture the day I was with Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. I don't just talk about it, I can bring factual evidence to show.
Wow.
And I don't know where it came from, and there was nothing in it to tell me who it came from. But I went and I took this piece of paper to one of my constituents, one of my coworkers there, who happens to be a former Philadelphia police detective. And I asked him, I said, hey, what exactly is this? What are these numbers? I know they represent something. That looks like, is it a court thing? What is it? And he looked at it, he says, that's an arrest record number. Huh. And I said, really? He said, yeah. And I said, oh, man, this is unbelievable. And I said, can you interpret it for me? And he did. He said, well, whatever this is, it happened in Germantown, Philadelphia, This is the approximate date, early part of 1967. And I said, oh my gosh, I wonder if this is the arrest record for the woman that killed my brother. I called the police department, wasn't able to get anything. Well, former district attorney of Philadelphia, Lynn Abraham, who currently is running for mayor of Philadelphia, had just gotten out of the DA's office and was into her private practice. And I had run into her several times over the 30 years in an attempt to get some help with my records. I went to her and I said, listen, I ran into her at a bookstore. And I said, listen, I really need, I got a piece of evidence now. Because everyone would say, well, Charles, you need a court record, you need an arrest record number, you need a record number. I said, I was 4 years old. How am I going to have an arrest record number? That's your guys' responsibility, not mine. You know, I said, come on. I'm coming to you. I got the newspapers. I got the death certificate. It's your job to tell me what the record number is. I don't know it. I was a baby. And so I took it to her. I said, listen, here, look, I got something now. And she said to me, she's the one that said, Charles, I want you to call this person. And she hooked me up with the head of homicide at the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office, who I immediately called. I was on my cell phone as I was walking out of the bookstore from seeing Lynn Abraham.
Wow.
And then that head of homicide, who I left a voicemail for me, called me a couple days later and connected me with the detective who ultimately found my records. So my prayer now is some 4 years later that those records still exist, that they weren't, we know, unfortunately, how government can make things disappear. I'm hoping those records haven't disappeared. I've recently, meaning just within the last year, found out through the medical examiner's office of Philadelphia, which, by the way, that's another area where it should have been public record, free to be gotten. I should have been able just to call, say, hey, I am Charles J. Stecker Jr., my brother Edward John Stecker, this is the date of death, I am his next of kin, and get his records. I was told I could never get those either. Well, within the last year, I was told when I pay $35 to the City of Philadelphia's medical examiner's office, they will release his autopsy report and any information they have on their level to me.
Wow. Okay.
Which is something I never had before. So I'm on the apex of getting these things. And
wow. Okay.
What's that?
No, I was going to say, hang on, because we're running a little late on our next break here.
Sorry.
No, it's quite all right, because it's so fascinating, I don't even want to stop. I mean, but it sounds like you're right on the brink of getting the answers here. Let me put you on hold here, and we're going to take a real short pause for the cause. We do have a special GoFundMe it's GoFundMe.com/Save This Child. This is for an abused little girl who is in grave danger, and she was sexually assaulted. The courts in Broward County have put her back in with the predator. Not only that, but the courts have also prohibited her from speaking out. And so if she's being abused right now, again, there's no telling, what's going on. There's no way for her to report it. We're trying to raise money to save this child. It's GoFundMe.com, Save This Child. There's also a petition linked. And we're a little over time here, but we're going to take a short pause for the cause. This is Steve Sumner for Blocker Radio. We fight evil. We'll be right back.
Hello.
All right, thanks for joining us again on the third part of our broadcast. This is Steve Sumner for Blocker Radio, and with us tonight is Charles Stecker. He has a very incredible story here. And Charles, where we left off, it sounds like you're on the brink of actually getting some answers as what happened in 1967. Can you go ahead and pick up where you left off? You're actually looking to. It sounds like you're almost at the point where you're going to actually get the medical examiner's record, correct?
Yes, I'm. All I have to do is send them a $35 money order, and per a verbal agreement on the telephone, they will then release their records they have on my brother. Now, I'll believe that once I have them in my hand. But yes, at least I have that. Before, I was told there was no record even when I would call there. So now at least there's some acknowledgement. And then when I found out there was records, I was told that I couldn't get them because I wasn't considered next of kin, and because my birth mother was still alive, she would have to go ahead and request those forms. And I'm like, well, indirectly, if my birth mother had done what she was supposed to as a mother, we wouldn't have been in that home for my brother to not be alive anyway. So,
Right.
Why I'd have to go to her to get her permission to get records and subsequent to that, that was back in 2011, some 3 years later, last year, I finally was able to bring enough evidence forward that as a blood brother, I am under the color of law considered, actually first considered more of the next of kin than a mother or father, believe it or not.
Wow.
A sibling is considered a next of kin to a sibling, even closer than a mother and father. So with that in hand, they finally said, okay, yeah, we can go ahead and just send us a $35 money order for our processing and getting the records. Now, should I have to pay anything? No, but will I pay $35 in a minute? Absolutely. It's just, why haven't I done it yet? Because I had some other things happen in life that have distracted me. I also have been kind of waiting to incorporate getting those records, hopefully in the same time frame as my sit-down meeting with Ed Rendell, so that I could go from the medical examiner's office to that meeting with Mr. Rendell, have the records fresh in my hand, dated that I got them maybe that day or the day before, and use them as leverage for him to get him to say, look, just get the records released to me. I mean, at this point, we're talking now 3 years since the article came out about my brother's death. The rest of the key players in my brother's demise are all passed away. The couple that were still alive at the time in 2011, the attorney that represented her, A. Charles Stecker Sr., he was still alive, and he just recently passed away last year. But there was nothing to hold him accountable for. He did his job. I can't fault a man for doing the job he was hired to do. But Arlen Specter was still alive, very much alive in 2011. We know he has since passed away. So I'm thinking because of some of the key players, and probably the key player being Mr. Specter, now no longer being alive, my chances of getting those records may have increased tenfold. Wow. I'm hoping it increased so much that they're just going to go ahead and release them to me. So that's some of the reason for the delay in my running and getting these medical examiner records, is I kind of want to try to, if I can, I want to encapsulate it all within a few days period and use them to show, former Governor Ed Rendell, like I said, he was not only former governor and mayor of Philadelphia, but also district attorney in Philadelphia, that, here's what I have, and here's how recent it is, and here's what I need you to do. And hopefully he'll do the right thing.
Yeah, because Arlen Specter passed away October 14th, I believe, in Philadelphia in 2012. So right. That definitely, that must have been a little bit of a game changer, I guess, for you, being able to do that.
I sat with Senator Arlen Specter back in 2011 when I was in Washington, D.C. I was down there to attend the 50th anniversary of Child Help, the National Child Abuse Prevention Organization. I was down there for a 50th anniversary, and I actually sat with Senator Specter at that show. I sat right next to him, and I got his card from his aide. Now, at that time, I didn't know at that time that he had been the former district attorney in Philadelphia. Trust me, if I had known his role I would have leveraged him there in that room that day.
Yeah.
I had been there. I was down there with, I was blessed to be able to go backstage and hang out with the likes of Ruben Studdard and Charisse and several other Hollywood, movie star actresses, singer type folk. And I would have definitely leveraged him, but I had no idea. I found out it was just a month or so after I was back to Philadelphia that I found out about his connection. I was like, oh, it was right there. But God has a plan.
Yes, absolutely. And
so, yeah, I'll let you know if things unfold. I'll definitely be keeping you in the loop.
Good. And I see here too, you do have you have a memorial page. You have you're active in YouTube. So for our listeners, by all means, check him out, Mr. Charles J. Stecker Jr. You can find him on YouTube. You also have, I guess, a memorial page excuse me, on Facebook as well, I believe, right?
Correct.
Yes. Okay. And I wasn't sure if there was anything else that you wanted to say by way of wrapping up the case. It sounds like you're on the cusp. Do you have anything in the works by way of articles or books, anything to bring to light the tragedy that happened, that is so common? Anything like that going on?
Well, I've got a few things working. The possibility of a book, and the possibility of turning that book into a movie, with some connections of some other folks' lives who's been made into major motion pictures. I don't have freedom to put their names out there right now without their permission, but
right.
Trust me, there's some major motion pictures that have come out that are about abuse and about people that went through it and overcame it, and they're working with me. But I do want to wrap it up with this. I want to wrap it up with something that goes off topic a little bit for a moment, but it's actually dead on topic, and that is this. Folks, when people go on and they start researching me, and you start looking into the information, you may hear and read and see things where it calls me a scammer, where it calls me someone who's living his life off of his brother's death, who's not only trying to make money, has made money off his brother's death, who has used his brother's death for his own advantage, and that is the furthest from the truth. I have never had any money come in for any reasons on my brother's death or for any other reason. I had started a couple of organizations. I had started an International Child Abuse Prevention Task Force. I reached out for financial assistance with that because I only had my little bit of money, and I was attacked. I reached out for my speaking company that I had incorporated called Charlie's Angels, and I was attacked. And I had people who came out and said they would help me, and when I accepted their help, they then flipped on me and the help that they gave me, they used against me to try to leverage me to do things that they wanted me to do. In particular, females whose ulterior motive was to get into a relationship with me as opposed to truly support what I was doing. And I'm like, no, I'm not interested in a relationship, and therefore they felt that they were taken advantage of, which I found ironic. So, you may read out there those type of things, and I will clearly hold myself accountable, and I put my name on the line. You'll read anonymous if you go on to the article page. You'll read in the comments anonymous accusations. Yet none of them will ever put their name out there, and I call them out right in there. Put your name here, my name is there. So that's not what I'm about, and I'm not doing any of this for myself. I'm doing this for two reasons. One, as a memory of my brother, and two, and actually the most important reason, is that we can find the systemic error, and I'm going to repeat that over and over again, the systemic error in a system that has been failing children now for over 50 years of my life. And that is what I want. That's my mission. I don't want to put dollar on. I'll continue to, I literally will walk behind a circus elephant collecting dung to make dollars to keep my roof over my head. I'm not looking to put a penny in my pocket for anything that's going to come out of this. It's about making sure we make a real change for children and for families.
Yes, and let me tell you, Bwaka, we're Brothers United Against Child Abuse. I can tell you personally, we have all been attacked. Myself, John Anderson, Becky Kemble, every one of us has people following and criticizing. So we feel your pain. This is something that is very common. The people that are running the show are, wow. I mean, and if you listen to Alex Jones and, who may be a little overboard on it, but really, the people in control are not the fit ones, and so yeah, anything that you can come across, that's a good attempt, like yourself, shattering the silence, trying to be a voice for children who can't speak for themselves, who can't defend themselves. This is exactly what we're trying to accomplish here, is to get out there. So I'm sure anyone who goes out there and looks you up, and you look like a great guy, Charles. You know, I'm sure they're going to take it with a grain of salt, because we've all been there. Let me tell you, there's no question about it. And I do see that you do have the Shatter of Silence on your own Facebook. Folks, you can find him on Facebook at Charles J. Stecker Jr. And any word on when have you started the book, the manuscript, or anything along those lines?
I've got excerpts. I've been collecting pieces I've written, bits and pieces here and there. Nothing's formally put together yet.
Okay.
I do have a couple different publishers looking at it. I've got some major authors that are looking to get behind me. Matter of fact, one of the authors that I've lost touch with, but I've got to reach back out to. A lot of his movie just went out of my head. Anyway, he's a major war reporting author, and he had a movie come out. It senior moment too early, but he's looking at helping me. A major motion picture that came out several years ago. I'll give a hint to this, because if someone figures out who I'm talking about, then good, but I'm not going to put the name out there. But it was a motion picture that came out about a young man who was abused as a child and joined the Navy with anger issues, and went on through the Navy's help, and a counselor in the Navy went on to overcome his anger issues and actually reconnect with his birth family after years of abuse in his childhood. That person is in the wings waiting to assist me with the movie script and everything, because his life was made into a national motion picture. So, God's got putting pieces into place. It's just a matter of getting those final puzzle pieces I need for me to move into the next step. I could have probably had the story written and without all these records, without the things I want, but I want to write facts. I don't want to write guesses. I don't want to write I think so's. I want to know. I want to
Right.
Yes, this is what happened.
Right. No, and it sounds like you're on the cusp, like you're on the very edge of finding all of these answers right now. When is that meeting going to take place? You have the sit down meeting that hopefully is going to be some kind of resolution, but is this happening in the near future?
It's hopefully happening in the next few months. It was supposed to have happened last spring into summer, and unfortunately, like I said, I had made some decisions and done some things in my life that distracted my attention from that, and I didn't make the phone call to make the final appointment for the sit down. Mm-hmm. But it's just a matter of me making a phone call, them looking at his schedule and giving a few dates that are available, us confirming a date, and then going out. So I'm anticipating, if I had to throw a time frame out there, within the next 30 to 90 days, having that scheduled for that sit down.
Great.
And then hopefully, not there long after, maybe even that day, being able to go over to the district attorney's office, which happens to only be 3 city blocks from where we're going to be having our dinner or luncheon. I'm going to try to schedule for a luncheon, so that way it's still during the daytime, and if they're open, there's really no excuse to waste time. Let's go get them right now.
Right.
I'll walk right in with you, and you can go and tell them I'm getting these records released because I am who I am. And then I'm going to have the reporter who wrote the article on me back in 2011 prepared, or at least her paper, if she's still not with them, have that paper prepared to do a follow-up story based on the outcome of that meeting. Oh,
great. And it sounds...
And I'm going to use that press opportunity as leverage for him, too. When I sit down with him, and if he decides, he's not really sure if he can help me, I'll say, okay, no problem at all, Mr. Rendell. When we leave, as we're leaving, I'll have someone from the paper there to you just let them know why you would think that you weren't able to assist me. I'd greatly appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is what we have to do, people. You have to, I alluded to it earlier, we're not going to get anywhere by standing on street corners and screaming and hollering. We're not going to get anywhere by wallowing in self-pity. What we have to do is you have to infiltrate a system which is what I was telling you about how I went to Philadelphia, quietly got involved with the political party in power, and was able to get what I needed to get to where I am now. I don't have what I need yet, but I'm a lot closer than I was. Get in there, infiltrate the system, use military tactics, get in. They say keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Get in there and make your enemy your friend, and get them working for you when they don't even know what they're doing, and then come out and expose what you're doing and be ready to reap the rewards, or at least be closer than you ever were before.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. And whatever it is that you've been doing has been working. I mean, you're getting so close, and the idea behind what we do here, behind what you're doing, is the same. We're trying to save kids. We want less deaths, less, more accountability, more common sense out there when it comes to these kids, because it's unbelievable. That would be,
unacceptable.
That would be the perfect thing. Yes.
Especially when a child is put into the care of a system because of abuse, there is zero excuse. I'm putting together some legislation that we're creating hopefully in Philadelphia, and then we're going to go across the state and maybe national with it, holding accountable everyone when it comes to a child losing their life. Not only the social worker or the person who committed the crime, the parent, the foster parent, the adult, whoever it was, the auntie, uncle, or whoever, but also the administrative level people who make the rulings that put these children where they are, who make rules that the social workers are bound to follow. I mean, there's some really, really good social workers out there that have their hands tied behind their backs, they'll lose their income and not be able to pay their debt that they incurred by going to college and getting a degree to do something that they wanted to do to help children. So please, folks, I know social workers get such a bad name, and there are a few bad apples out there, but there's so many that are good that their hands are tied behind their back by a bureaucratic red tape system of political figures and administrative level people who have visions of grandeur in their futures that really don't care about the children. They care about what they're going to do.
You hit the nail right on the head. Systemic. It's a systemic thing, and we're having such a big problem with the judges down here that one of my previous guests, who is a medical doctor and an engineer, a former Olympian, I mean, this guy's no dummy, and he's, not a bad guy. I mean, we're talking about a medical doctor, and they took his kids away because he prayed with them. So again, so people are afraid of even being religious with their kids, and we're looking for solutions here because it's, again, systemic. We have guardians ad litem who are horrors, absolute horrors, and psychiatrists. The psychiatrist who is also involved in this doctor's case is responsible for other children's death. So, again, a systemic thing that we're looking to clear up. You're right, there's good and bad everywhere, but boy, let me tell you, when you see a pattern occurring, with judges, with guardian ad litems, with psychiatrists, that's what we need to expose. So you're right on the money, Charles. This is exactly what needs to happen, in my opinion. But
I agree. We need to link together. We, meaning all of us, we are the child welfare system.
That's right.
We, the people, are the child welfare system. We need to stop giving power over to the government and asking them to take control of our situations. If you know a family member, somewhere in your family, a child's going through a situation, it's your responsibility to step up and not allow the government to come in and take over that situation, but you get involved. You put your name on the line and your life on the line for that child and your family, and you take care of it and you hold accountability. That's what's going to change a lot of what's going on out here. We're too much running to the government for their help. We don't need them. They need us. They're supposed to be serving us, and we've got that all flip-flopped around right now in our country. Let's get this country back to what it was founded on, a government that serves the people, not a people that serve the government.
That's right. Absolutely correct. Well, thank you very much for your time, Charles. This is Steve Sumner. I'll give you the final word in just a minute. Again, Steve Sumner working alongside of Becky Campbell and John Anderson, Brothers United Against Child Abuse, and Beating the Drums for Children, organizations that have tens of thousands of members. You can find this and all of our broadcasts on stolen.club, on Facebook, and our Brothers United Against Child Abuse websites. So we're out there. Please, by all means, help us with our causes. We do have our pet cause going on right now for helping an abused little girl, someone, again, who is in grave danger, who was sexually assaulted, raped at the age of 4. Her virginity was taken away, apparently. It's a very violent thing. And so what we do have here is a GoFundMe /Save This Child, GoFundMe.com /Save This Child. And there are also petitions online. And Charles, we do look forward to hearing from you in the future. Any type of progress that gets made, we would love to hear about it. I hope you'd be able to come back.
I definitely will keep you updated along with Becky and John. And I want to thank you for the extra time tonight, for your willingness to give me the extra time, and for doing that. And thank you to everyone who will be listening to this, and make a change in the children's lives by not just talking about doing something, but actually doing it. Our children need feet in the street, not voices sounding in the darkness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, this is Steve Sumner for Blocker Radio. We Fight Evil. Our guest this evening was Charles J. Stecker, Jr. Please follow him online and support him as much as you can. Thank you so much for listening tonight, folks. We'll see you next time. And if you do want to come on board, look us up and talk to Becky. She will coordinate our future guest. Thanks again, folks. Have a great evening.
Hello. Hello.